Hello, hello. I have begun recording. Class is now in session. Welcome to class. Come have a seat. So, we're a bit behind, but this week we will be starting the first major project. It actually started last week, but it's due next Wednesday, right? The 11th. We've got a week and a half. So, just to go over what I covered at the end of last class and a bit more. It's due on the 11th. We're probably not going to present the 11th, but if we do, it might carry over into the 13th, because the 16th and 17th, we do not have class. This is fall break. Woo! By the way, happy Halloween, everybody. We're in the skeleton war again.
Yay!
So, for project 1, you will be making an ArtStation account. You will revise your models. You will re-render your models. You will learn rendered wireframes today. And then you'll upload them all to ArtStation, make a ArtStation link, throw it into the discussion board, and you will come up here and present it to the class. Now, we went over how to make an ArtStation account at the end of last class, but for the people who aren't here, go to ArtStation, and if you've ever made an account anywhere, you hit the sign up button, you give them an email. Hallelujah.
I made an account on my personal email, is that fine?
That's perfectly fine. If you ever want to use this going forward past, ETSU graduation, I highly suggest you do it with a personal email instead of with the ETSU associated email.
Can you change your email?
Yeah, you can change your email. I've tried. Sometimes it's a little finicky. Once you make an account, nothing will change, but you can click your happy little icon in the top right corner. You can go to view profile or edit profile, doesn't really matter. If you go to view profile, you get to see what you look like. You have a wonderful little about page where you get to write about who you are as a person. You've got a portfolio where you can see all of the stuff that you've thrown up there. You can go to manage portfolio where you have all of these projects that you've worked on. Yeah. Okay. You can create a new project. This is where you're going to upload all of your pictures. You're going to type in a little description for all of your projects. This is a so-and-so ammo crate that I made in Maya with such and such tools, right? You can add a little thumbnail over here on the right, save it, publish it, and it'll pop up over here. Now you'll notice that I have stuff in here, in my managed portfolio, that is not published. That's because that stuff is unfinished, right? And I don't want to show it off, so you can leave it unpublished if you want to upload it, update it later. But for the purposes of project 1, make sure they're all published so that when you get up to present, they're all up there. Good, that's ArtStation. Going back to the project. I don't want screenshots, I only want renders. That means no snip tool, everything is going to be coming off of Arnold Render and Maya hardware, and we're going to get into that later. In order to receive credit for revisions, you need at least 1 dice, at least a crate, at least 1 chair, a render and wireframe of each. Alright, yes?
Can you elaborate more on what you mean by revising the process?
So, if you turn in a chair, right, and a crate and a dice, and you end up with an 80, later down the line, you can change the stuff on your ArtStation, and I will look at it towards the end of the semester, and I'll be like, oh, your ArtStation has changed since you presented it, your work is a lot better, I'll bump your grade up to a 90, 100, depending on the work you've done. You can always get revisions on your major projects and your assignments. In fact, if you turned in stuff for the previous 3 assignments, and you update your work for ArtStation, all of your updated work will count towards revisions on your previous assignments. So if you got a 70 or a 40 on your assignments, you can bump that up, and you can bump that up for the rest of the semester. Yes?
Can we now color the objects that we make? Like revising?
Yeah. I still strongly encourage students to not texture their models, but you are welcome to at this point, now that you've turned in the basics. So, at least 1 dice, at least 1 crate, at least 1 chair, render, wireframe. Good. Alright. Let's see. That is that. If you go to the bottom of your discussion post, of the discussion post assignment, you will see example of dice, chairs, and crates. I haven't updated the chairs and crate example, so I will do that later. But at the very bottom, you also have this rubrics thing. If you click the rubrics button, this is the rubric by which I will be grading your project. There is a section for modeling, rendering, visual presentation, verbal presentation. Again, you will be standing at the front of the class presenting to your other students, and your ability to critique peers. All right? Now this includes the discussion posts that I will make you respond to, as well as actively giving critique to whoever is on stage. This whole rubric is not requirements, it is guidelines. So for instance, if I go to visual presentation, one of the things that's mentioned is pieces stand out from past student work, lighting, posing, or additional models beyond the main four. You do not need additional models, but adding additional models will get you a higher grade. Good. Now, as far as standing out from past student work, we have these links here. 2 of them are broken, but I'll fix that. But you can also go to ArtStation and search the ETSU chair project. These are all of the chairs made by past students. Wow. Some of them are rendered in ways that are interesting. If you see this on ArtStation, it stands out. Some of them, not so much. All right? Same thing with the crates, ETSU crate. Crates. Look at all those crates. Same thing with the dice. ETSU dice. You get the gist. So, when you are making your stuff on ArtStation, make sure that your stuff is noticeable. Alright, that's ArtStation. So, that's the entirety of first major project 5. Good. Beyond that, since we're a week behind, Module 6, which is due next Monday, which is before your first major project, you have this what is game design discussion. I want you to play video games. This is a little contradictory because I also want you to spend a lot of time working on your first major project. But I do want you to have a little bit of leisure, so go play some games, and we will talk more about proper game design game playing on Wednesday, because today we're going to be talking about updating our models and rendering them and making them look pretty. But I strongly suggest, and this is the first time that I'm going to do this, so let me go back to content. There are 4 videos, I believe, 2 in week 5 and 2 in week 6 that I want you to watch. Rendering wireframes. This is a good video for you to watch. It is about rendering.
It doesn't look very nice. So now we need to use the power of.
Watch that video. We also have in the read, watch, and content section, Emma's videos on optimizing chairs, rendering scenes, this sort of thing. He does this with the hydrant, but we didn't do a hydrant because this is a bold project.
Redo.
But you can do follow along with this video
Start
using the
recording.
chairs.
Okay, so optimizing geometry.
Okay. That's that. In week 6, we have these 2 videos in here, which are how to play as a game designer.
Try and understand why you're experiencing.
So yeah, go watch all of those videos. Also watch the in-class recordings because that also teaches you stuff. Good, let's move on to Maya. Any questions so far? Great. Can anyone tell me what this is?
Sphere.
I'm so proud. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about topology. That means all of those n-gods, all of those edge loops. Why do those matter and why do I care? So, if I have this cylinder, or this sphere, and does anyone know what a ball joint is?
Yes.
Great. A ball joint is a sphere with a little stick coming out of it. Think of a little stick man arm. Your shoulder is a ball joint, your hips have ball joints, anything that is a sphere with a rod stuck into a socket. If I want to make this sphere a ball joint, I can select some number of faces. I'll select these ones up here. Whoop. Missed a couple. And selected one too many. And I can extrude it up. Boom, instant ball joint. However, what if I want another joint over here? Well, then things get tricky because I can't select a cylindrical selection, I have to select a square selection. If I attempt to do this, whoop, they will look different. Everyone see how they look different? Great. So, this is an example of a pole, right? Earth is a sphere, it has two poles, and a latitude sort of structure, where the horizontal lines don't have poles. So, if you wanted to make this sort of joint, instead of using this sphere, we can instead use these spheres. Does everyone see that those are also spheres?
Yes.
Great. This is what is known as a cube. If I open up this happy Platonic solids thing, I have this primitive cube with 3 subdivisions. If I lower those subdivisions to 1 and 0, whoop, let me drop it down to 0, please. It's a cube. You can access this sphere with this happy little icososphere thing, but the important thing to note is that it's a sphere with a ball shape, where I can select some number of faces, and because it is a cube, I have identical faces on each side. So I can grab those, I can grab these, I end up with shapes that look identical. I actually selected 2 high. Let's select these instead. There we go. I can select shapes that are identical. Now, why is this interesting? Well, if I go back to our original sphere, and I select the edge loop, remember how we selected edge loops before, double click them, I only get a slice that goes halfway across the sphere. Same thing happens if I select any other of them, I get these little slices. If I attempt to select edge loops on the other sphere, I get loops that go all the way around, and that is the case for each and every edge loop. This is called edge flow. The edges don't break because the sphere, with poles, has this ugly little top bit with tries all over it. The sphere does not. These properties extend beyond spheres, all right? We're going to talk about this in relation to chairs in just a bit. Also, this is another sphere. If anyone has ever played D&D, you've probably heard of a D20. This is an icosahedron, also known as a D20. You can add a bunch of subdivisions to it. And if you attempt to select edges on this one, you'll notice that the edges curve into plates instead of into lines. Any questions? Great. Now let's stop talking about spheres. Get rid of all the spheres. Notice them. Cylinders. Somebody posted this wonderful picture to the tutoring Discord. Shadow, I blame you.
Thank you.
These are cylinders. They're all 20-sided cylinders. I'm going to get rid of my grid so you can see them a little better. These are all 20-sided cylinders, but you'll notice that the top caps are different. All of these cylinders have quote-unquote correct topology. Personally, I hate the first and third cylinder because the top face is a massive n-gon. But this has some uses. For instance, I can just select one side and extrude it. And then I can fix the topology later. With this one, I can do the same thing, but now I also have this ring around the middle n-gon. Yes, Layton?
What do 1 and 3 look like smooth?
I will get to that in just a second. If I select this ring, now I have a little donut shape. Alright, so that's useful. This is sort of the default. I've just added an end cap. If I drop that back down to 1, that is the default cylinder. And then lastly is this square cylinder. Any ideas why this square cylinder might be useful?
Maybe if you just need to connect something using that center bit.
If you need to connect anything using that center bit up top, the square cylinder is a miracle. Here's a cube. Whoop. Here's a cube. Thank you. Make it a little bigger. And because I have that square subdivision, I can line it up perfectly and I can make sure that I can boolean it in, combine it in, and lose no edge loops and make no n-gons. Also, if I have this happy little square cylinder, I can select a couple faces and extrude them in, and suddenly I have a flathead screw top. Great. So that's topology. If I smooth all of them, as Leighton wonderfully suggested I do, you'll notice that this one is the one that stays the most like a cylinder. That's because it has this extra edge loop on the top face, so it holds more of that cylinder shape. The default becomes an ugly pineapple with a bunch of bumps around it. The one with no top topology whatsoever just becomes almost a sphere. And the square one, unsurprisingly, becomes a square. So that's cylinders. Goodbye cylinders. Hello cubes. These are two shapes. You'll notice that the shapes are identical. Let me drag them a little bit like this. So here are two identical shapes. If I smooth them, you'll notice that they are no longer identical. Any guesses as to why? It's the edge flow. Good job. I'm glad that all of the hints I'm dropping actually matter. Oh dear. Oh, honey. What has happened?
Uh-oh.
Have I broken something?
It's art.
Come back to me. Okay, well. Can I select it? Yes? Goodbye.
I know what
How would you
going
fix
on
that?
here.
The answer is you remake it.
You go. That's the answer.
I have I've fixed it. Don't worry about it. That cube never disappeared, I promise. Let's go. Let's rebuild that. 3, 3. Nope, not you. 3, 3, 3. Face you. Extrude. So, haha, they're back to normal. Nothing has ever happened. Good. So, the difference between these two shapes is, of course, the edge flow, as people aptly noted. You'll notice that the one on the right has lines going to the center. Does anyone remember a shape that has lines going to the center, like a pole? Cylinders, yes, it is very much like a cylinder. That is a four-sided cylinder, not a cube. This is a cube with a bunch of subdivisions going around it. So, the benefits of each. This one, on the left, if I smooth it, because of those extra lines going down all the way on the side, you get a little more square shape. This one, because it doesn't have those lines on the side, and because it has these diagonals going into the center, has a much smoother curve leading up into the nub, right? This is a little bit sharper than that is. So, how do I create the best of both worlds? How do I get both of those forms? Any ideas? Add subdivisions to the cylinder. That is a wonderful suggestion. Let's give it a try. So I'm going to go to face on both of these so we can see what's happening. I'm going to start by trying to add edge loops to the cube with subdivisions. So if I add in edge loops to the cube with subdivisions, I can add them perfectly normally, right? And if I smooth it, I end up with a cube. If I try to do the same trick to the other one, remember that this shape is a cylinder, which means all of my edge loops will want to go towards the center. You see them going up onto the nub. So if I add in edge loops like I did with the other one, there we go. You can also, because it's a cylinder, add edge loops around the height, around the top of the cap. So I can add in edge loops here, but that also doesn't give me quite what I want. So, let's try again. How do we achieve the best of both worlds?
Just delete them.
Just delete them and start over.
Just give up and go home.
Wrong. All right. The secret
Close
answer is to do both. The hint was pretty obvious. So let's select these two edge loops and scale them out a bit. And select these two edge loops and scale them out a bit. Ooh. Still looks like a cube. Definitely not a cylinder. This middle face here is going to be a cylinder. I'm going to extrude it, and I'm going to add an offset. I'm going to make my offset 0.2. Bang. Since I've added this offset, if I scale this down, you can see, oh, come on, let me scale it, our friendly diagonal lines that go towards the center. And if I now extrude this up, when I smooth it, now I have a rounded top and a square bottom. Ain't that amazing? That's topology. Now, if I have this shape, because I have both the caps cylinder shape and the square border shape, I can fence my cube normally without caring about the stupid little cylinder shape up top. And I can add cap edge loops around the top so that it doesn't interfere with the bottom. And when I smooth it, I have added a cylinder onto my cube with absolutely no booleaning or anything silly like that. Any questions about how edge loop can affect a model? Great. Let's turn off the cubes. Oh, right, I made you. Goodbye. You cease to exist now. Oh, no. Object mode. Cease to exist. Thank you. Hooray. So, going on to our actual models. Let's start with the crate. Most people's crates look like this. So we'll do this one. If you did the third crate, chances are you don't need to add a whole lot of detail, you just need to fix it a little bit. If you did the second crate, chances are that you need a lot of work on it, or you want to do the third crate instead. If your second crate looks good, you're good. If you did the first crate and your crate happens to look like this, you've got a little bit of love to put into it. So let's pull up our reference from D2L. D2L, please, thank you. Where is my discussion posts? They're not here. Discussion posts. Let's go to our crate. You remember the crate. So if you did the crate, you might notice that the top is made up of a bunch of separate planks. That's what you gotta do. So this top plank, you're going to replace it with a bunch of smaller planks. It seems easy enough. You can take your top plank, scale it in a little bit, and then just duplicate it around so that it matches your reference. Make it look like it's got a bunch of top planks. Questions about that? I hope not. Yes?
Would it be a good idea to clone it first before scaling it down? That way you can make sure that the
Sure.
parts are the same size.
Everyone's workflow will be different. You can clone it first, you can shrink it down first. Doesn't really matter as long as you end up with the appropriate result. Now, if your lid was already fenced, or if it wasn't fenced, when you smooth them, you'll notice that they will all end up sort of rounded at the ends. So make sure that you fence it properly before you go duplicating bits. Let me undo that, put our lid back. Great. You will also need to add divots to your top planks. Some of you don't have those in, so we'll quickly go over that again. Let's pick a number. Let's look at our reference. How many divots does a plank have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they're sort of in this little zigzag pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They all have about 8 divots, and they're all in a sort of little zigzag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 4 edge loops, and those will be sort of randomly distributed because it is supposed to look a little clunky. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. That is where all of my divots will end up. Now we've got 2 this way. So does anyone know how to multiply to 8? How many zones do we need going the other way around? If we've got 2 going horizontally, how many do we need vertically to end up with 8?
4. 4.
4, good answer. So let's go. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh dear, we forgot that we need 2 per, so let's add 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta-da. Now, if I extrude all of these in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. World's easiest divots. Ta-da. But they're not in the classic zigzag pattern. What are we going to do about that? Well, there's a lot of options. More edge loops is certainly one option, but I'm going to mess this up instead. So I'm going to grab these two and move them this way. Whoa, come back. I extruded them. Okay, here we go. I'm going to grab these two faces and just drag them down. Ta-da. Now they're in a zigzag shape. Same thing over here. I'm going to grab these two, drag them up. Now the astute among you will notice, wait a minute, these edge loops over here look a little bit stretched. You're not wrong about that. So I'm going to select these edge loops on the side, these edge loops on the side, drag them to meet. Same thing over here. Drag these edge loops to match those faces. And then I'm going to extrude my divots in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Easiest divots on Earth. When I smooth this, looks a bit like a cracker. So let's fix that. We're going to add our fencing. Remember that fencing is important. So I'll go 2 on the ends, 2 on the other ends. And you will notice that if I attempt to add edge loops in between my holes because of that zigzag shape, they will also end up sort of zigzag shape. If I do it in between the zigzag shape and the straight line I have in the middle, as I approach the middle, it'll flatten out. As I approach the zigzag shape, it'll zigzag. If I insert one sort of in the middle, I can select that edge loop by double-clicking an edge and scale it flat. If I want it to look straight. Any questions about that? So, around each of my little zigzags, I'm going to add an edge loop going this way, this way, this way, this way. 1, 2, 3, oh, come back. 4. And I'm also going to add a bunch of edge loops going this way, 2 on either side. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Proper fencing, right? Ta-da. Now, you can leave it there because these holes do sort of bleed into the wood, right? They're sort of dented and holy. If you want sharper divots, you can, of course, fence the inside of the holes. So let's add a couple fencing to these 4 so that we can compare them with the other 4. So I've got 4 fenced holes, 4 unfenced holes, and we can see the difference if I deselect the object. Any questions about adding divots to the planks? Good, I'm glad. So, once you've added divots to the planks, you can do something similar to the other 2 planks, or you can duplicate this one and put it into position. That's the crate. Also, make sure that you have your 3 little panels and the screws on. If you don't want to do the screws, I'm not going to make you do the screws, but we're going to very quickly go over how to make the screws, because now you understand how edge flow works. So here's a cylinder, right? I'm going to reduce my edges from 20 to, let's say, 10, 16. I like divisible like order. 16. So step 1, look at the top view, edges, delete them all. Hooray, we now have this massive end-on the top and bottom. Now we're going to take our multi-cut tool, we're going to cut it down the middle. 1, 2. 2 perfect halves. Then we're going to do it the other way. 1, 2. 2 more perfect halves. Then we're going to do the same thing with the other edge loops. So those 2 will go there, these 2 will go here, Ta-da. Have I lost anyone yet? Great. So from here, you notice that we already have this cross shape in. You can add in edge loops around the side to get a smaller cross shape in the middle, right? I'm going to select that cross shape now so you can see it. It looks like this. Oop. Select these, please. Thank you. That is our cross shape in the middle. You could extrude that in and then just scale it up to match. Or you can say, I want to preserve this shape. Select all of the faces that make up your top. And extrude them in. So extrude, and then only at an offset. I'm going to go with 0.5. Oh, 0.5 might be a bit too big because I forgot to scale this cylinder up. 0.2. Hey! Now that I've scaled it in by 0.2, I can take some of these edges and scale them flat. Take those two, scale them flat. These two, scale them flat. These two, scale them flat. And these, thank you. And these two, scale them flat. Good. I can go to vertex. Select some of these because I don't like that this shape is sort of like a rounded cross. I'm going to move these to match the vertexes that I actually care about, the corners of this middle square. And you'll notice that as I do that, some of my quads become triangles because this used to be a cylinder. So we'll just do this all the way around, match my vertexes up to the vertexes I want them matched. And now, please move, thank you. Now I can select the cross shape again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Here we go. Oh, I've selected some faces on the bottom. Undo that. Extrude those in. Maybe scale it down a bit. Come on. That almost looks like a full head screwdriver hole. Let's add some fencing. See how that looks smooth. Oh dear. Let's grab the faces that go horizontally. Deselect the bottom. Delete the bottom. Select these faces. Push them in this way. What extra face have I selected now? Don't do that, Alex. There we go. Select these faces. Push them in horizontally. Select these faces. Push them in horizontally. Same thing with our walls. Push these in. Why are you like this? Edges. You two. I missed the corner edges. My bad, guys. Let's grab these. Please behave. Thank you. Something over here. Scale all of these in. There we go. Now it's looking more like a Phillips head screw. These two, these two, these two, these two. Push those in. And last ones. This side, you two, you two. Oh, didn't select, deselect the other side. There we go. Oh, missed one. Come on. There we go, hooray. Okay. And you can of course add some more fencing to get it to look nice and sharp. I'm going to add a ring around the outside, a ring around the inside. Am I missing anything? Nope. Ta-da. Phillips head screw. And of course this will be seen at roughly this distance, right? So it doesn't have to be the most detailed object in the world. Drag that into position. Rotate it around. Delete the faces that won't be seen. Stick it in here. Scale it down. And you've got your screw hole. Correct. And then just duplicate that for each of your little things, and you're good to go. That's the crate. Any questions about the crate? Great. Moving on to the wooden chair. Cease existing, thank you. The wooden chair. Most people's wooden chair looks like this. Anyone disagree? Great. So I'm going to go to object mode. I'm going to select my wooden chair. You'll notice that my wooden chair is in this group. That's just because I wanted to have it in a layer. I'll go into groups more in a bit. But I have all of the individual pieces of my chair in here. And I can just select my group chair if I want to just select my chair. If you have your pieces loosey-goosey sitting in the middle of nowhere in your Maya project, and you want to put them in a group, you select them all in this thing called the outliner. That's by clicking one of them and shift-clicking the rest, or by control-clicking them all, or by selecting them all in your viewport. Select them all and hit Control-G, because group starts with G. And then you end up with a group. You can double-click that. You can rename it Wood Chair. Any questions about grouping? I'm going to put them all back in my wood group. Get back in my wood group. Thank you. So here they are back in my wood group. Now, I have this chair. It's a wonderful little chair. Most people's chairs have faces on the inside. So if I select any of these faces, Control 1, F5, you'll notice that I've got faces on the sides of this plane. I'll select those two. And you can see that they are inside my chair legs. Those faces aren't visible. Delete them. You don't need them. We talked about this briefly in the actual chair project, but any faces that just aren't going to be seen, they take up render space. So just get rid of them. So all of these panels probably have 3 or 4 faces that you can get rid of. And then after you've got rid of them, re-fence your model, make sure that everything is fenced properly. Because if things aren't fenced properly and you've got holes in them, when you curve them, weird things will happen. Next, the chair legs. You've probably already used the bend deformers on them and the flare deformers on them. Once you have them in the shape you want them, you don't need 90% of these edge loops, right? Because let's take a look at these chair legs. Everything from about this edge loop up is straight, so there's no reason to have all of these. Let's just get rid of all of them. Delete them all. Remember, it's Control-Delete, otherwise you're going to end up with a bunch of vertexes. And from the middle point bottom, probably don't need all these, but it is a little curved, so I'm only going to delete every other one. So let's do that one, that one. Actually, that's probably enough. So I've deleted about half of the edge loops. If I smooth them both, you can see that they look roughly the same. This one actually looks a bit better because I believe that I only fenced one of them. Actually it's because I deleted the top. So that's another thing. You delete the top. This face has a top face, this face does not. When I smooth them, one of them has this sharp hole, the other one ends up smooth. So that's another good reason to delete your extra edge loops and extra faces. Same thing with the back of the chair. This lies the back of the chair. We do need the top side because that is on the outside of the chair. We don't need the bottom side. You'll notice I've already deleted the bottom side. If you do want a little bit of a rounded end, you can always, after you delete the bottom side, just extrude this in a little bit, and then you get a little bit of that rounded bottom shape, right? But I don't like that, so I'm going to do it. Once you have it in this little bend shape, you can delete as many edge loops as you want until it has less edge loops, but try and maintain the shape. So for instance, if I go in and delete every single edge loop, you will notice the object pop. So I'm going to delete all of these edge loops, and you'll see the faces pop straight. Don't let it pop straight. Instead, maybe delete only every other one, and it keeps the curve. And you can take this all the way up to the top. You'll keep the curve. Once you get up to the part that is still straight, you can probably just delete all of them because it doesn't curve anymore. Ta-da. And if I go back to my Control 1 view, They are identical, even though one of them has less edge loops. Any questions there? Great. If you rendered your chair like this, what did I tell you? Some of you will know. Some of you will know later. If you rendered your chair like this, it means that you have very faceted faces on the back of your chair, because you'll notice this weird faceting. Let me zoom in so that you can see how flat this back of the chair is. You see all of those flat planes? That's because you have way too many edge loops on this part. So we're going to delete some of these, because we don't like them. Get rid of them all. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Get rid of them all. When we smooth it, less faceting. Nice, smooth curve. Any questions about the wooden chair?
What's wrong with your things in it?
Oh, well, this chair was used in the previous example about deleting. So if I go to my vertex view, you'll see that I've left a bunch of extra vertexes in the middle of nowhere. So if I actually go ahead and select them all and get rid of them and rebridge this, I will solve my problem. Oh gosh, I have a bunch of edge loops that don't exist either. Oh, this is a problem to fix.
Why does that happen?
What do you mean, why does it happen?
Right.
It happens because this was a example chair that I used to teach you guys how to model your chairs. So I modeled it wrong on purpose, and that caused it to break. It was never supposed to accomplish a purpose beyond, being example material. But here I am reusing it to teach you what's going on. This face, where does this face exist? It doesn't. Great, delete it. Can I select my edge loops now, please? Yeah, there we go. So let's bridge that back together. Thank you. That fixed one of them. Same thing over here. Delete all of these extra edge loops that you don't love. Do we have an extra face? Of course we do. Select that. Select all these faces, select all these faces, bridge them together. Ta-da, fixed chair. There you go. Alright, that's the wooden chair. Let's move on to the swivel chair. Most people's swivel chair looks very different. So this is sort of an average of what everyone turned in. I hope that you see a little bit of your chair in this chair. Does anyone think their chair looks vastly different than this? I'm sure the answer will probably be yes, but so first thing, a lot of your chairs, let me actually pull up the reference for this chair again. Please just open my email. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let me go to another tab and log into my email. There we go. Pull up the reference. Here we go. Please pull it up. I believe in you. There we go. Woo! Okay, yes, allow cookies. So, if we look at this chair, please let me rotate it around. Please. Where are all my pretty little pictures? There we go. So, if we look at this chair, stop, back. One thing you can see from the side view is that the bottom pole in the middle does not go into the middle of the chair seat. It's slightly back. The front of the chair lines up with the front of the wheels. The back of the wheels goes a bit behind the back of the chair. So, if your chair looks like this, chances are you need to move your chair back. So, let me select all this, and this is where your chair base should probably be. There's a little bit of overhang in the front. There's a little bit of overhang in the front before the mechanism. Any questions there? Good. Your ribs should bend back the same way that the spine does. Right? So they all have this little bit of a bend forward, horizontally. but they also have a little bit of angle in between them going back along the spine of the chair. If I select any one of these, I can just rotate it to fit where I want it to face. You want to line it up to the back of the chair. Let's look at the references. They all sort of curve a little bit. They bend. Good? Okay. The buttons and the chair arms are not one object. They are separate objects. If you boolean them in, that's fine. Just make sure that they look good. Alright? But in this case, in my case, the way I showed you in class, they are separate objects that you can move around and adjust as you wish. The chair armrests, some of you have them going into the seat cushion. They come out from the bottom of the chair. Let's rotate the chair a little bit. Actually, let's pull up the bloody instructional YouTube video. Yes, yes, yes. Laugh all you want. They come in at the bottom. Some of you have them coming out of the seat cushion. If your chair arms look like they're coming out of the seat cushion, bring them down. This wonderful arm bend shape was made with a cube that we used the bend deformer tool on. If you used a torus and then squished the torus, here's a torus. Alright. If you used a torus, let me rotate this around. Oh dear. Cut this into quarters. This looks very much like the arm shape. Right? You all understand this. If you use the torus and then you just squished it down, chances are that it looks like this, which sucks because it's wider on one end than the other. If you try to squish it the other way, well, now it looks like a circle again. So don't do that. If you absolutely want to use a torus to save yourself time, go to your scale tool, hit D, rotate your pivot. I will not suggest this often, so that it is aimed into the bend of the torus, and then scale it this way. If you do that, you'll end up with this shape. I still don't recommend it, but you can do it. Don't do it. Instead, use a square, make it wide. Alright, come on. Make it square, make it long, make it flat. Add some subdivisions with our insert edge loop tool. Add in a couple hundred edge loops. Don't add a couple hundred edge loops, add in maybe 20. Add those in. There's the beginnings of our armrest. Go to the deform tool. Object mode, deform, nonlinear bend. Oh, didn't have it selected. Deform, nonlinear bend. There we go. Now it's got a bend in it. What? Where's my bend? My bend. Where'd you go? Let's try this again. Select the object. Thank you. Deform. Nonlinear bend. One more time. This time with feeling. A bend. A miracle. Type in some number. 50. See which way it's going. That way. Don't like it going that way. Rotate the bend. Aha. Armrest bend. Don't like the low and high bound. Change one. Decide that this is my left arm. Pull this in a bit. Increase my curvature. Let's go to 90-degree bend. Armrest. Scale this, delete by type history. Scale it down. This is the beginnings of an armrest. Any questions about the armrest? Okay, does anyone have any extra questions about the swivel chair? Because I'm sure people do have a lot of questions about the swivel chair. Okay, let's go in order. Yes, Lee.
So, about the mechanism on the bottom, are we required to...
About the mechanism on the bottom. Do not go to this level of detail, right? Some people added a couple of levers and just stuck them in. Some people tried to get the rough shape in right. Some people, Shiloh, added in divots for screws. You don't have to go that hard. Do you still have more questions? I know you do, but let's give other people a turn, because I know some people do. Yes?
How would you go about making the, like, S shape for the very back?
The S shape in the back. All right, let's cheat. Can I bring back my cube? So this is my armrest, right? I'm going to drag this in a little bit closer. Let's see if I can pull this off from there. All right, so this is my armrest that I've slightly modified. You'll notice that my curve is actually a bit farther to the right than I would like it. What I'm going to do from this point is I'm going to delete by type history on this cube, and I'm going to add a new bend, nonlinear bend. Now there's a bend in it. It's in the middle, hopefully. Ah, yes, it is. There it is. So, this bend doesn't quite line up with the inside of my cube, so I'm going to drag it in a little bit. I'm going to increase my curvature, let's say 40. And now I've bent the bent cube. I'm still going to decrease my low bend to 0. I'm going to drag this in. So now I've got this shape. Now that I have this shape, I'm going to go back to object mode, click my cube, make sure that it's bending the right way. Yep. Edit, delete by type history. Then I'm going to add in another bend. Going to increase my curvature to some number. I'll go with 50. It's bending in the same direction, so I'm going to rotate it so that it's facing the other direction. Come on, sugar. There we go. I'm going to decrease my low bound so that it doesn't affect the stuff that I want it to keep. And I'm going to drag this into position so that I start getting that S shape. Once I have the bit that bends forward, save that, edit, delete by type history. Yup. Welcome to modeling. I'm going to double check that it's bending the right way. Yep, okay. And I'm going to add, any ideas what I'm going to add?
Another bend.
No, it's another bend.
Oh.
We're going to bend it forward this time. Decrease my low bound again, and pull it up because I just care about the top. And in fact, I'm going to rotate this one a little forward. Yeah. Let's bend that. Let's bend this harsh 80. Yeah. Give me that bend.
So we're giving a scoliosis, essentially.
We're giving the chair scoliosis. Well, if we look at the reference of the chair, it's got this stupid little S shape in the back. The chair has scoliosis. It actually has two spines. The spine that goes against the human is normal spine shape.
Why does the chair
The one in the back, the scoliosis. What?
Is there a bar connecting the both of the spines?
There is a barb connecting both of the spines. Let me find an actual image so that I can zoom in. You will suffice. Oh, what image in new tab? There is this little Nike checkmark shape that is connecting both spines. Some people have that, some people don't. I won't be too much of a stickler about it, but if you want to get as close to the reference as possible, add that in. So, back to my happy little spine scoliosis shape. Edit, delete my type history. Now I've got my spine. I'm going to rotate it around. I'm going to notice that my pivot is nowhere near it. Modify center pivot. There we go. Now I'm going to rotate it around. There we go. Position it where it needs to be. Rotate it a little bit and add micro adjustments as necessary. So mine has a bit more put into it, but this is the basic shape. And you can play around with your bends to get the right shape. Good. That's the spine. The other spine, same thing, right? You just use your bend deformers, but you make it look like a letter C.
Why does the chair have two spines?
Why does the chair have two spines?
What's
So,
the point?
so the ergonomics answer is if I'm sitting in the chair and I lean back, there's a bit of squeeze in the back of the chair, so I can lean back against the ribs and it'll compress and it'll feel nice. That's the short answer.
Ergonomic schmergonomics.
Any other questions about the swivel chair?
Simple.
Please ask more questions about the swivel chair. Yes?
You said I had zero-dimensional,
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I was confused.
I will. Oh gosh, are you okay with me pulling up your chair in D2L?
Yeah, that's fine.
Talk about specifically what was going on with yours. Remind me who you are.
Nathan Castello.
I knew your last name, but I couldn't spell it. Nathan. Yes.
After you get done with this, could you do mine as well? I was not
Sure.
here Friday, even though I situated recording, but still.
I'm aware.
It was the most recent
This one?
Nope. Or whichever one was the most recent comment.
Aha. Final revision pictures. Swivel chair, swivel chair, swivel chair. Are these the wireframes? Nope, those are the renders.
Should be screenshots.
Let's try the screenshots. So, if I look at the bottom of your chair, you've got a number of faces surrounding each chair leg. If I look at your hard wireframe, nope, nope, nope. The ones that are nope, close. Not you either. Have I failed? You had an image. Let's try this one more time. Not you, not you. You. You get to live over here. You get to live right here. So, if I zoom in on the base of your chair, here, you have edge loops that don't line up. And here, you have faces that aren't visible on the hard preview. So this ring of faces doesn't exist over here. What that means, I'm going to show you as an example. Here's my chair seat. I'm going to select one of these faces and I'm going to extrude it. And then I'm going to forget I clicked extrude. That face doesn't exist. But if I hit 3, you'll notice that the extrusion still happened. I just have a zero-dimensional offset in between them. You can sort of see this if you are paying very, very close attention, because the faces around this face are glossier.
Well, and it also looks like the face that you extruded is a bit more square.
It does.
That's what I noticed.
You can also click them and drag them out, and you see that extrusion still exists. So you probably have something like that going on. That is a very common mistake. A lot of people do it. It happens. Ways to fix it? Well, I'm going to do it again. So there's my broken face. I'm going to select these 4 faces that don't exist and delete them. And now I've got a square and a seat with a hole in it. Right, if I select all of my seat faces, there's the hole. And if I drag them down, there's the square. So I'll go back to my unsmooth preview and I'll start selecting vertexes. So I'll select the 4 vertexes of the plane that I knew I extruded. I'll go to my display, heads up display, poly count. Oh, come back. Heads up display, poly count. I recommend using the poly count at all times. So right now I've selected 4 vertices, so those are good. Here I've selected 5 vertices, but I've only got 3 selected. That means some of those vertices are duplicated. So I'll go up here. Next to the bevel tool is the merge tool. I'll click merge, and you'll notice this 5 go to 3. Ding, 3. Now I've got 3 vertices selected. That's all right. I'll keep moving down. This one, it tells me that's 2 vertices, so I'll merge that one. And I'll select this one because at this point I've guessed, hey, that's another one that's mixed up. So I'll fix that one. And now when I go back to my smooth view, it's all good. Yes?
You said you were going to teach me how to fix my legs?
Teach you how to fix your legs. Did your legs bleed up into the base? Let me get to Leighton first, and then I'll get to you, Zach.
One more thing, could you go to rough view?
The rough view?
Yeah. And that face that you fixed, one of them doesn't look super glossy.
Right. So because this face has been merged back in, the object forgot where it used to exist. So the texture is different, but not actually. If I go to the UVs, which you will not be covering in this class, if I go to my UVs, this normally doesn't look this way. This is, I've chopped and screwed the model up so much, and that is the singular face, that is the face that I have selected over here. Now, normally, if I make a cube, this is a little bit extra. This is what a cube's UVs look like. You will remember that the seat began as either a cube or a torus. The way this works is UVs unwrap your object. So if you've ever unwrapped a cube, right, you can imagine that you can fold up this shape into a three-dimensional object. This is the skin that you would be painting with textures. I could explain it more, but that is a modeling for entertainment issue, and you shouldn't have to worry about it now. Once we get to the end of the semester, to those supplemental classes that I might teach you, right, if people are very interested, we can talk about textures and UVs. Chairs, Zach, legs. Zach, legs, where are Zach's legs? Have I lost D2O? No, it's over here. Is it with a K?
C-A-C-K.
Yes.
C-O-Y.
Your chair doesn't exist. Oh, that's because I'm in this. Go back. Zach. Zach. Where's your chair? The first chair project. Yes, your chair legs bleed into your chair. Alright.
Updated was in the replies.
Where the replies? Was it in the replies? What were you saying about the replies? Zach?
What?
What were you saying about the replies?
I said it was the updated chairs, like where in the replies.
Ah, yes. True. So your chair legs, but the issue is the same. Your chair legs bleed up into your chair. So, if I smooth this chair, you'll notice that my chair legs don't bleed in. Right? I don't have that swoop going up into the chair base. Yours very much have this swoop that shouldn't exist. This swoop. This sort of smooth bend into the base bleeds in. The chair we used as reference, on the other hand, very much does not have that. It is very much just hard end. So, to get this effect, you have several options. First, I'll show you why your stuff is the way it is. I'm going to select one of my chair legs, I'm going to select my base, and I'm going to combine them, and I'm going to merge some vertices. So, let's go this, let's do these two, merge those, and merge you two, and you two. There we go. So, this is an example of your chair. Ding. You've got that going on. Add. So, the way you fix this, several ways. Number one, you select the faces on your chair leg. You go to Edit Mesh, Detach. Problem solved. Other solutions. You add in edge loops going around the ring. So if I add an edge loop just above the chair legs, problem solved.
I'm pretty sure there's also something else with the wireframe view that you...
Let's double check. Let me close all these.
It was also to do with the legs.
It was also to do with the legs. Yeah, I think you've got a Engon somewhere around here. Not you two. Where are you, little Engon? There. Are you the Engon? Yeah, look at you. This face over here is an Engon, right here. Because if I go to my snip tool, please open my snip tool. Okay, let's go paint. Much easier. Copy image into paint. Zoom in on your N-gon. Brush, red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vertices. N-gon. This face over here is actually a perfectly good quad. Because this face has 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That one's fine. But you do have, one of them has to be an N-gon. Either that or your camera is crazy. So let's take a look. Yeah. Oh, I would like to believe that some of you have been following along and working on your projects as I described them. Or, if not, some of you should be working on your projects now while you have the time at the computers and just chime in with issues you find. Yeah, so let's zoom in on that chair while get up in there, rotate it around. Yeah, that's what I got.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's an issue. Alrighty. Yes, Shiloh.
So, I may or may not have did a stupid. So when we made the dice, I didn't have a hard drive yet. So I saved it in the server.
Uh-huh.
Well, I can't find it. So I was wondering, do you want me to remake the whole thing and then that, or do you want me to just leave it? Because you said the only thing that was wrong with them is because it wasn't, 3 wasn't diagonal?
You must upload a die to ArtStation.
Yes.
I would prefer it if it were the correct die.
Okay.
If your die had an issue with it, you know it did.
Mm-hmm.
So if you'd like to turn that in for your ArtStation, you know you're conceding points.
Mm-hmm.
But that is also your prerogative. If you'd like to save yourself the work, go for it.
I
If
tried to
you
remake it and it looked
like to
really
remake it,
bad.
go for it.
My first one was so good, and now I'm like, I don't
Well,
know how I did that. At least to me it looked
There's
good.
class recording. Anybody else with the swivel chair? Otherwise, I'll move on to rendering. Because we've got half an hour left.
Can you do the detach tool thing again real fast?
Yeah, of course. So right now, my chair leg is attached to my chair. Right? This is all one mesh.
Yeah.
If I select some number of faces, I can go to Edit Mesh Tools, Detach. And when I do that, they are now still one object, right? I can still move them around at the same time. But I can select faces, and if I double click a face, because they're detached, they're now separate, right? If you have an object that has multiple detached pieces as a part of it, you can go to Mesh, Separate, and it'll cut those up into separate objects. So now, because I've detached and separated, my base is one piece, my leg is one piece, and my wheel is one piece. So, let's talk about rendering. I'm going to turn on my lighting layer. This is my lighting layer. It's got a sky dome in it. Most of you will render an image that looks like this. Modeling, rendering, render, render sequence. This will pop out an image. It'll look like blue until it exists. There it is. Chair. Huzzah! If you want to spruce that up a bit, you add in a plane or a disk. We'll talk about the disk in a bit. Scale up that plane. Bada bing, floor. Grab a couple edges. Pull that up. Bada bing, walls. Alright. Now if I render with my walls, render. Alright, sequence again. Oh, it's going. It's thinking about it. Notice that this is a very simple lighting setup, and it's taking maybe a minute or two to actually render it right. There it goes. My chair on a slightly more interesting backdrop. Also make sure that your chair is smooth when you render it. I don't want to see those hard angles in it. And make sure all of it is smooth. There it goes. That's my chair, that's a backdrop. Because I've just dragged that plane up, I have this hard edge pointing in. If I wanted to get rid of that hard edge, I would smooth my walls and my floor, right? That makes sense. Now, I'm gonna stop it there, because realistically, you could just cut this, right, as a little square and be happy with that. You don't have to render 2 minutes of white space. If your chair is blending into your background, you're going to click this little circle over here. If you're in the rendering scape, it's not under anything. If you're in the modeling scape, it is underneath Arnold, where we put the lights. This little blue circle is called the hypershader. I'm gonna click the hypershader circle, and that's gonna pop up this window. Hypershader circle, lots of fun. This is where you make materials. Now there are 2 materials, well 3, that I would like you to remember. The first one is Lambert. If I click Lambert, I get a Lambert. I don't know why it's called Lambert, but Lambert lets you play around with color. You can click color, and you get a happy little color wheel. You can change the color around. You also have transparency, ambient color, incandescence. Doesn't really matter. Diffuse is how glossy it is, for lack of a better term. But realistically, you just want color. You want to make your backdrop probably a little darker. So here it is, black and white. You'll notice that Lambert 1 is white, Lambert 2 is black. I will go close my hypershader, select my walls and my floor, hold right click, go all the way down to the bottom to assign existing material. I'll make my walls Lambert 2 because that is black. I will select my chair, my swivel chair, hold right click, assign existing material, Lambert 1 because Lambert 1 is white. And if I now go to my render settings, render sequence, up. Now, it'll take me another minute or 2, but my chair will be white and my backdrop will be black. Come on, Maya, I believe in you. Notice that all I did was change 2 colors, and Maya is now having to do a thing. So, you can expect your render times to vary. There it is, now it's white on black. Isn't that nice? Alright, that is basic rendering. Now let's talk about, yes?
What's the render sequence versus like the render current frame?
So, yeah, let me explain what's going on there. If I hit render current frame, I get the Arnold render view. This is the Arnold render view, and you'll notice that I have this weird pixelated effect, and it takes a while to get rid of it. And I also have this play button in the top right corner that I can hit, and it'll give me a live render versus a still render. So right now it's rendering, it's getting rid of all of that dither. You have to wait for it to get rid of that dither. One of the problems that I find with this is that if you don't wait and you just use the image, a lot of people uploaded half-rendered images. So this is a little bit more risky, but the benefit of this is that if I hit play, let me see if I can just scale this window in a little bit, please. Okay, let's do it from the sides. If I hit play, it will still do that little dither thing, but if I ever move my camera on accident, it'll re-dither it, and it'll track my camera all the time until I stop. There we go. And it'll give me a live render. And whenever I want it to stop giving me a live render and to just render out the whole frame, you have to wait until it's actually done. And if you ever hit the stop button, it'll stop giving you that render, and then you have to refresh it. It's a pain. I don't like this. I prefer to just say render sequence, which pops up the silly little blue rectangle, and this does the same process. If you remember how it was doing that light dithering, instead it does this little blue circle so I can see exactly what parts it has finished rendering, and I can stop it early once it's where I want it. I don't know, I prefer this. If you do this though, sometimes you'll end up with a little white square. You see that little white square going around the edges? That's telling you where it's done, but right now it's done and that little white square is still there. So if you do it this way, crop the little white square out so that it's not in your finished render.
That one will move with the camera, it's just like a one time.
This one will not move with the camera at all. No, never.
But it should be the same like quality?
Yeah, it's the same. I prefer render sequence a little better, but if I zoom in like really close, you can still see that it's still got that dither on it. Part of that goes into my render sequence, into my render settings. So if I close my render, go to render settings, you've got in Arnold Renderer a bunch of fun things. So diffuse and specular are how rough your image is going to end up. So you might want to pump those up. Remember that if you pump those up, your render times will take longer. You can also go to your Skydome light. So click my Skydome light, go to my attribute editor on the far right, and you've got a resolution thing that you can increase, and you've got a samples thing that you can increase. If you increase the samples, that means that you will get less of that sparkle dither, but it will also crank up your render time. So let me increase my samples to 3. 5 is a good standard, but I'm just going to do 3 right now because we're half an hour left. Let's do another render sequence. It's going to think about it. There it goes. So I've pumped up my specular, I've pumped up my diffuse, I've pumped up my sampling, and now my image is a little crisper. So yeah, it all depends on what render settings you use. Yeah. Generally speaking, 19 by 20 is a good resolution so that you get a little bit on the ends to crop. But there it goes. Whoop. I'm going to stop it a little early here, zoom in, just so that we can see that there's not as much dither. So that's that. If you are the kind of person that cares about how pretty your renders are, a lot of you should be. Next to the button that creates the grid is this button that looks like a film gate. That's because it's called film gate. If I click the film gate button, it tells me what my camera actually sees when I hit render. So that is the image that is actually rendering. If I change the size of my viewport, say I want to drag my menus a little bigger, the film gate still tells me exactly what my render camera is going to see, and it is exactly the same thing regardless. If I move my camera, so let's pose my camera here, so that it is just at the edge of my film gate, right? Then when I render it, sequence, it'll end up matching that scale. There it goes. It's probably better to do this in render view, just to show it off, because it will be faster. There we go. Just at the edge of the image. Now, that's helpful. There's a couple other tools. This is your resolution gate. So right now I'm at 1920. That's my 19 by 20, or my 1920 1080. I mean, you can tell that that's my 1920 by 1080 because it says 1920 by 1080 here. So that's when my image was cut up at the top of my render. So if I turn that on, now I can zoom out, see that it'll fit perfectly in my render. Whoop, my render settings, close that, hit this. Now it's inside of my render settings. If I ever change my render settings, so right now I've got this 19 by 20 by 1080 up here. I can go to my render settings, go back to common. Can I not have a massive menu, please? Render settings, there we go. If I go down to my render settings and change this from 1920 to 1080 to say 720p, so I hit HD 1080, and I go to HD 720, that's 1280 by 720. If for some reason you want to be a little weird, and you want to go 2048 by 2048, now I've got a square, etc., etc. And it'll always adjust to whatever your render setting is. That's film gate. Turn those both on. So, that is basic render settings. And now let's talk about rendering wireframes. There's 2 ways to render wireframes, and I don't care which one you use. but some of them have benefits over the others. So the first one is, I'm going to leave my camera exactly where it is. I'll go to render settings, and I'll change Arnold Renderer to Maya Hardware 2.0. You'll notice that my settings have changed. My resolution is still the same. If I turn on my gate again, my resolution gate, it stays the same. But I've changed my renderer. Now I go to my Maya Hardware 2.0 settings, and I go down to render options. If I go down to render options in Maya Hardware 2.0, I have this render mode, shaded and textured. I'm going to change that to wire on shaded. This will give me this perspective where I get the wireframe on the shaded view. And I'm also going to turn on my anti-aliasing because otherwise my my wireframe will be a little glitchy. Same thing with the sample count with your lighting. If you turn this up to 16 and you're rendering from home, your computer will scream at you. Don't do this. But on the machines here, they can probably handle 16. I'm going to leave it at 8 for now, just because we want a fast render. I'm going to go to render, and I'm actually just going to do this in the render preview. Please work. No, you don't want to? All right. Render using my 2.0, render sequence, give me a frame. Boom, wireframe. Now you'll notice that if you do this, you get the background. You'll notice that the thing I have selected is blue, and that my background is green. The reason is because I have my background selected. If I deselect my background and re-render, render, redo render, now it's all blue, but I still have that background. So before I render, delete my background or hide it, render, redo previous render. Now I have just the chair on my black background. Any questions so far? Yes.
You don't need like a light or anything, I guess, for this
You
thing?
don't need a light for my hardware, but I've left the light in there. If I actually, oh, let's find out. If I delete my Skydome light, because it did exist, and I redo previous render, it should just give me a wireframe. Nope, it's still there.
Yeah.
So you don't need a light. You don't need a light. Put my Skydome back. So, if you want to change the color of your wireframe, let's do that. First off, I'm going to change my wireframe on shaded to just wire. Let's give you just a wire view. So if I do this, now I have just the wireframe, but you'll notice I see through it, which is why we were doing wireframe on shaded. Don't do this. This is a nightmare. Always do wire on shaded. That being said, wire on shaded. Let's go to my preferences. Windows settings preferences. Color settings. Some of you have asked about color settings. This is the time to learn. This color settings window is all of the colors that Maya cares about. We're going to go to inactive because we don't have our chair selected, and we're going to go to objects. You're going to get a bunch of colors. So, polygon surfaces, because we've never touched NURBS besides making rope. I'm going to change this color from polygon surfaces to blue to white. That's yellow, that's white. There we go. Save. Close that. Redo my render. Now I've got white on Lambert. And one last trick that I'm going to do is I'm going to select my chair again. I know that my chair has Lambert 1 on it, so I'm going to change my Lambert 1 color to black. Or you can create a new texture and make that black. And if I do this, and I go here, and I redo my render, I will have just the wireframe. Gorgeous. Beautiful. That's how you do rendered wireframes. That's the first way of doing rendered wireframes. If you don't want to play around with Maya Hardware 2.0 and changing the colors in your settings and doing all of that, we've got another way of doing it. This will take us to our second form of material. So let me pull up my hypershed again. I'm going to set my Lambert back to a sort of grayish. Great. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into this little text box in my hypershader, and I'm going to type AI wired. AI wireframe. I'm going to click that. That gives me a texture that is black, has this sort of weird grid thing on it. If I go to my chair, hold right click, assign existing material, AI wireframe, you'll notice that it sort of turns up black in the viewport, but if I render it, let's pull this up. Yep, now I have this gray wireframe view. So, you'll notice that every face now has been triangulated. This is very clunky. Oh, I noticed that the base of my chair isn't combined. Wait a minute. Has this happened the whole time? It has, hasn't it? I'm so sorry. Let's do that. Where are these? You. All of you go into my swivel chair. Thank you. Swivel chair, assign existing material, that work. Has that solved my... Yes, okay, good. So, if you apply an AI shaded wireframe, you get a bunch of triangulated geometry. We don't like that. So, we're going to minimize this, pull up our hypershader again. The settings on my AI wireframe, we have edge type triangles. That's why we got triangles. If I switch this to polygons, go back to my render view, come back to play. Now it's polygons. Who knew? If I don't like how thin my lines are, come back to my hypershader, increase my line width, go back to my render. Wow, look at how thick my lines are. There are downsides to this, namely places where you have a lot of edge loops, so everywhere I fence is darker. But this is a very nice image and I like this very much. You can also change the fill color and the line color. So I'm going to change my fill color to black, my line color to white. That reverses them. But you'll notice that my background is still white. That's because I still have that sky dome. Remember, we're using Arnold. If I delete the sky dome, we end up with the same thing we used to have. Those are the two ways to render wireframes. Any questions about rendering wireframes? Great. So, I'm going to take this wireframe, file, save image, and put this in my downloads folder for ease of access. I'm going to name this chair 3/4 wireframe. Naming conventions. You will learn to use them. Now, having done my wireframe, I'm going to bring back my skydome light. I'm going to select my swivel chair. I'm going to assign a texture that makes sense. Let's go Lambert 1. I'm going to recreate my floor because I deleted it earlier. So floor. Alright. Make floor big. If you don't want to recreate your floor every time, I highly suggest hiding it in the layer. Select my edges. Drag those up. Change my camera angle. Oh dear. Object mode, please. Thank you. Take me into my walls. Thank you. Let's say that I wanted to work with this view. So if I wanted to work with this view and I wanted to render out a frame, I'm going to do this with my preview just because I want a fast image. Please. Front one. Arnold render preview, please. Load. Where have you gone? Don't exist. Okay, we'll do this the hard way. Since it doesn't want to give me the window that I want, I'll ask it to re-render this frame, and it's gonna suck. Oh, joy. I believe in you, Maya. Well, this is rendering. Any questions about rendering wireframes? Great. Any questions about rendering in general? Yes?
Will you give specifics as to what you want, or just...
Yeah, so according to the discussion post, this is the bare minimum. One render, one wireframe per object. Realistically, when you present your work, you can look at the references. Let's go teacher chair. When you present your models, you probably want to have a couple of views of them, some zoom-ins on some of the more interesting geometry. You want to show off as much of your work as possible, right? So even on something like a basic wooden chair, you probably give a couple of views. Your wireframe, you probably do the same thing. Just frame it in a way that looks good. Front, back, side are the basics. 3/4 view, heavily encouraged. Yes, Shiloh.
So when you have a art station, do you want to post your personal work or only your best stuff?
Do you want to post your personal work or your best work?
Yes.
Hopefully, both is
Well,
the answer. Hopefully your personal work is your best work.
Yeah, but also.
So, okay. Let's talk about my art station. This is a good example. So, I am a 3D generalist. What that means is I do bloody everything. That's a problem. Because if I want to apply for a job, and I want to apply for a modeling job, then I don't want to show any of my programming work, right? So what I'll do is I'll just send them my modeling work. You notice I have these little categories here. You can split up your categories. So you can have one for personal projects, and one for career work, and one for other fun stuff that I've done in my free time. So I have a modeling one, I have one for materials and texturing, and I have one for programming. And that's one option. Other options include, like I said, in your portfolio, you can hide things. So sometimes I'll just upload all of my work, and then I'll hide the stuff that I don't want to show to people. That's an option. Always upload stuff that you want to show off. It doesn't matter if it's your best work or not. Why is this not rendering? Hello?
You and I had this issue the other day with the block.
Okay. Victory. It rendered some of it. We'll use this as an example. Here's my render. Great. I'm going to open Photoshop. While Photoshop loads, I'm going to render a wireframe from this exact angle. So, select my floor, select my chair, assign my wireframe material, render a frame. Okay. Let's come back here. Log into Photoshop. Yes, that's me. That, please. Thank you. So, file, my render. There it is. That's my render. Let's go back to Maya. Here's my wireframe. I'm actually going to do this one more time with my side unhidden. If you don't like deleting your stuff all the time and recreating it, you can select something and hit Control H. Control H is hide. Again, if you ever don't want to see something, Control H is hide. You'll notice that when I hit Control H, it becomes grayed out in my outliner. If I ever want to see it again, I have to select it and do Shift H. That is unhide. So in this case, I'm going to hide it again, redo my wireframe render. That'll be fairly fast. Thank you. Copy my wireframe render. File, save that as my wireframe to my downloads, please. It's easy. Wireframe. Ooh. Wireframe. And let's change my file type from alias fixed to something that makes sense. Make sure you're saving it as PNGs or EXRs. Okay. And here is my wireframe. So I'm going to drag my wireframe in here. There it is. Since I rendered it from the exact same camera angle, I'm going to line them up in Photoshop. You'll notice that because I snipped my render, if you let your render go all the way out, this will be a lot easier, but since I snipped my render, I have to do a little bit of finagling to get it to line up properly. There we go. That's about right. Good. So there's my wireframe. There's my image. Now we're going to do some magic. I'm going to right-click my wireframe layer in Photoshop. I've got a bunch of settings. We don't care about any of those. But you'll notice that I have this little picture thing down here. That means that it is a sampled image. I want to rasterize it. You don't have to rasterize it, but I'm going to rasterize it. Rasterize layer. Now I don't have that little picture thing. That means that this is an independent image from the other image. I'm going to set my opacity to, I don't know, 41. Now I have wireframe unshaded. Isn't that fun? Alternatively, I'm going to put this back up to 100. I'm going to set this to multiply. Now it's darker. If I set it to lighten, now I've got this, where I have just the wireframe on the actual mesh, and I can always hide my wireframe. And if you're particularly fancy, you can add a mask, go to the gradient tool, and do this number. Let's do that. Oh, I love you, Photoshop. Please let me draw a gradient. Thank you. So now there's a gradient, and I have half of my model unwireframed and half of my model wireframed. A lot of people have done this in the past. It's something that looks cool. You can do that. Any questions about doing Photoshop silliness with wireframes? This is not required, but it does look cool. You see this in car commercials all the time. Has anyone ever seen a car commercial where like the fucking engine breaks apart into a million pieces? Similar thing. All right. One last thing, since we've got about half an hour left of class. This is a very simple lighting setup. I don't expect you to do any of what I'm about to show you, but I think it's cool, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to learn about it. So let me close all of this down and show you my lighting project. This is my lighting project. You might recognize this chair. I hope you recognize this chair. I'm going to zoom out so that you can see what's going on. First off is this silly thing. This is a dome. You can either think of it as a sphere that I cut in half, but realistically what I did is I made a disc, which is sort of like a plane, except it's a circle, right? And I made that shape with it. Now, I centered this chair in the middle of my object, in the middle of my dome, and I've got a bunch of grayed out things on the side. Now, each of these is a different lighting cell. What that means is, if I click on one of these and hit F and Control 1, I have some lights. These are all spotlights. They're not your basic sky dome. Every spotlight, you can go in to the attribute editor, and you can play around with a bunch of numbers. You've got the color of the light, the intensity of the light, the exposure of the light, how big your sampling is, and all of these lights are different. I don't expect you to do this, but I'll explain why I've done this right now. So, let me undo my Control 1, let me grab my chair, let me focus on my chair, rendering, render, render. Actually, I'll just use my normal preview because otherwise it's going to take 5 years. So, that is what a gray chair, I will remind you that this chair has no goddamn textures on it, looks like with a proper lighting setup. There's no texture on it whatsoever, it's just pretty. Now another thing that the astute among you might have noticed is that besides my lighting groups, I have multiple cameras set up. I have got green overhead, blue overhead, white generic, etc. All of these names match a certain color of lighting, but without turning in those different kinds of lighting, I can swap my camera real fast to all of my perspectives. So there's my back, here's another back. If I go to the green one, I believe that's the front view, never mind. There's a close-up in case I decided to pose a larger object. If I go to the daytime, I've got this view which is slightly more dramatic, etc., etc. And you can set up multiple cameras by create camera. create camera. That is a thing you can do. Please, there we go. You can then also change your camera view by going to View, select Camera, picking a camera. Great. Now let's talk about my lighting setups. So this one, very basic, that's my perspective shape. It's sort of a blue backlight with a orangish red front light. If I hide that, remember that is Control H, goes dark. Let's show a new one, Shift H. Now it's green. Same chair, same matte gray, different color, different vibe. Let's hide that one. Let's do daytime. This is your default, almost, except that instead of having a skylight, I rebuilt it with spotlights. If I do, I believe this one is the full-on, yeah, this is something that you might have seen in some old dramatic sepia films, right, where I've got this dramatic, you can imagine a man sitting in that chair crying his eyes out, right? And of course, at any point, if I want to bring any of my models into something like this, I can just save this project as my lighting file, and I can just copy paste my models from other files into here, and I never have to set up my lighting ever again. A couple of last ones. Let's do the pink one. Not that pink. But if I ever want to change my lighting setups, I'll snap you over here. I can, actually terrible decision on my part. Let's open up my Pink Studio, select a couple of my lights, go to my attribute editor, click on some of these lights. I can change my color. So right now it's sort of the sepia tone. Let's change it to a full-on neon pink. Some people would like that. I'm watching. So you can do silly things with lights. And again, this chair is matte gray, but matte gray looks really nice in lights. Yes?
Power of light.
Why do the shadows look strange?
So the reason the shadows look strange is because right now I'm in my Arnold render view instead of my render current sequence. But also because my sampling is turned down to 1. So if I turn the sampling up to 5, that shadow will become just a bit sharper. There we go. But some of my other lights still have a sampling of 1. So that one's kind of sharp. Let's select the other one. So area light 5. Let's bump my sampling up to 5. My area light 16, let's bump that up to 5. My 18, bump that up to 5. And my 19, bump that up to 5. So now, that shadow, it's recalculating. Quite a bit sharper. But it takes a lot longer to render if you turn up your lights to something like that. And also because the color of my light is pink, the shadow is sort of a dark pink. It's just a thing that happens. So that's lighting. Does anyone seem interested in lighting? All right. You can find some basic lighting rigs online. You can download them off Gumroad or something like that. But they do cost money. And I do not suggest you invest money into this when you can just figure out how to do it yourself. One last thing, because I sort of glossed over it, I'll teach you how to set up a camera. So, create camera. I've created a camera, its name is Camera 1. It's down here. You can see that it is spawned at the origin. So if I go to view, select camera. Hello, please? Hello? No? Okay, let's try this a different way. Let's cycle through cameras. So now I'm in Cam Studio Blue. There's a keyboard shortcut for cycle through cameras, but we can keep cycling through cameras. We'll eventually get there. Right now I'm green overhead. You can do that over and over again. If you don't want to do that, you can instead create camera from view. That is another option, Control-Shift-C. That'll give you a camera. So in this case, I have this new camera. It is green overhead 1. You'll notice it's down here at the bottom. And I can rotate that around. And if I go back to my perspective view, I can see it over there. It's spawned in. I've selected. If you ever move your camera in a way that you don't like while you're posing images, so say that I take this picture right here, and then I want to get my wireframe exactly the same, but I accidentally move my camera out of position, you'll notice that Control-Z doesn't work with your camera. Who has tried because Control-Z doesn't work with their camera? I'm so glad some people tried. So, to undo camera move, close and open brackets are undo and redo camera move.
Oh my god.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Why though?
What do you mean, why though?
Why though?
So wonderful.
It's just a thing that happens. Don't worry about it. No, fun camera tools. If you don't want to ever move your camera, so say that this is the perfect camera space. I'm actually going to go to camera overhead. So let's say that I never want to move this camera, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock my camera. That is this button right here. So the first button is select camera. The second button is lock camera. If I lock my camera, I'll never be able to move my camera again until I unlock my camera. And then I'll be happy. And that is one way to prevent yourself from having to use the open and close brackets. Lock your cameras. Any questions about cameras? Yes?
Can you share the lighting file with the rest of us?
I would prefer not to share this lighting file with the rest of you, because Todd will be confused about where you guys got your semi-professional lighting. I would prefer if you learned how to do your own lighting. All right.
Interacting if it will help us out.
Broke down so fast.
No, I'm not gonna share with you how I built my lighting setup, because I know that. But I will very quickly run through how to build the lighting setup. How about that? So, hide all of my lights, hide all of my dumb cameras. All right, you two, get out of here. So, I have a chair in a position. Great. Step 1, pose my chair how I like it. Step 2, create camera from perspective. So right now I'm in perspective, create camera, not here, view. Create camera from view, Control-Shift-C. Now I'm in perspective 1, lock perspective 1 so that I can never move this camera again. Here's my perspective 1 camera. I'm going to change this to beauty shot. Beauty shot. Great, that's where my camera is. Hit spacebar, go back to my perspective view, move around, that's where my beauty shot camera is. All good so far? Good. Create a plane or a disc. Here's my disc. Scale her up. I'm going to select some of my edge loops. I'm actually going to extrude them out just a bit so that I have this shape. And then I'm going to pull the last one up. And this is going to be my dome. So I'm going to move my edge loops up just a bit so that I get that curved look around the edge. There we go. Now I've got a little smooth edge around the bottom. In my example, this object is reversed, so I'll very quickly go to my modeling, deform, not deform, mesh display, reverse, flip them back around, there we go. This is what my dome sort of looks like. You can add as much detail as you want, but this is good for demonstration purposes. So now I have my chair in the middle of nowhere. I've got my camera looking at my chair from where I want it to, and if I hit render, you will get nothing because there's no current lights, right? Let's double check that. Here's my render, I hit play, I'm in total darkness. In my render view, I'm going to make sure that my perspective shape is my beauty shot, just because that's what I'm going to use. And now I'm going to start lighting. So Arnold lights, area light. Area lights are your little spotlights. So I'm going to drag this spotlight somewhere. I want a spotlight that is coming not directly from the camera angle, I'm actually gonna hide my disk real fast. That is Control H. Hello? Control H. Thank you. I have my camera select, my light selected, didn't I? Control H. There we go. Here's my spotlight. There's my camera. I want to put my spotlight coming from sort of near my camera, but not in front of the camera because otherwise I'll get a shit ton of glare. So here's my spotlight, there's my camera. Let's angle my spotlight to aim at my chair. Let's scale my spotlight up. And if I render right now, let's unhide my disk. Play. I get nothing. Any understanding as to why I get nothing? It's because the intensity of the light is low. So let's select my light again. Object mode. Light. Thank you. My intensity is currently set to 1. Let's play around with that. Let's try 1,000. Ta-da! Chair. I'm gonna smooth my disk because I don't like the hard edge around the corners. Now I've got that smooth edge. I don't like that my light is gray. So let's select my light again. Let's do something a little bit nightimey. I'm going to go with lightish blue. There we go. Nice nighttime scene. That is one light. Now we're going to duplicate this light with the shift to clone. There it is. I'm going to rotate this so that it's angled from the top. Drag this one up. Let's drag it up a bit more. I'm actually going to scale this one down. Drag it a little bit forward. Pardon?
Does anyone have the attendance sheet? I just realized I didn't sign it and I have to go.
I don't think it ever made it over here.
I'm going to... Okay, we're calling names next class. Where's the attendance sheet? Someone's got it.
Someone sent it on the back table.
Great. I'm glad someone sends it on the back table. That's where it should be by the end of class. Anywho, as we're wrapping up, I've moved this light on top of my chair. I've changed it to yellow. If I decrease the intensity of this one, let's say to 50, and actually drag it a bit lower so that it's just above my chair, now suddenly whoever's on this chair is in an interrogation room. Lighting. You can get things that look like colors without changing the colors of things. Ta-da! That's it for today.
So why do you have to put the intensity so high?
You don't have to. It depends on the distance. So if I delete my disk, right? If I look at my units in between my chair and the light, you could call that maybe 20, 30 degrees. In physical light, if you change the exposure, you need to have less intensity. It's all about playing with the numbers and getting something to work. I just clicked a bunch of numbers that I knew would work. So, yeah. Lady. No, go for it. What's up? Oh. Let me stop my recording then. OBS, stop recording.